I'll go ahead and get started. One of the reasons I was asked to come in was to try to give the Chamber sort of a presentation on what's happening across the country and with states. Obviously, everyone knows that states like Missouri and others are facing budget shortfalls, a situation perhaps that they haven't seen in the past in decades. We did have a situation or just a few years ago following the dot-com bust that affected many states. But in short, the quick overview to the situation right now is that state revenue performance is weak across the country. Budget gaps have been growing since last year. Spending cuts have been widespread in touching just about every area of state budgets. And budget conditions are at this time are presently fragile. And I'll get into the details during the PowerPoint presentation on each of these points, but it is a situation that has caused us a great deal of work at the National Conference of State Legislatures as we try to monitor what is happening, why it is happening, and the extent to the problems states are facing have grown. So, in short, it's a revenue performance situation for states. It is. This is not a situation where states are in any way overspending. I'll get into some of the details about that. But the states are suffering because of what's happening on the revenue front. Sales taxes have been declining as consumer confidence has plummeted to record levels. I think since they started taking consumer confidence surveys, we are now at the lowest point, in over 40 years on that scale, and that sort of showed itself in terms of if consumer confidence falls, people are much more reluctant to make purchases, especially major purchases, automobiles, homes, white goods such as refrigerators, appliances, big ticket items that really generate a large part of sales tax collections for states. In many cases, obviously, if you're a state that doesn't tax food, for example, people still purchase food, but you're not taxing that for the most part in most states. But it is a situation where the sales tax has declined dramatically in many states. Personal income taxes also reeling from the rising unemployment situation, and as stock markets decline, we see stock option related revenues drop down, bonuses and so forth. Anything related to the stock market has been declining. So 2/3 of all state revenues are derived from just the sales tax and the personal income tax. So if those two base revenue sources start declining, it's not surprising that we start seeing the problems across the country with states having a decline in revenue base, month after month or quarter after quarter compared to last year. So these are the two primary revenue sources that we monitor carefully to see how they're doing, and as they start going down, that's when we start seeing problems across the country. So we'll also be watching when they start turning around, but at this point, that's not happening. Corporate income taxes, again, also as business profits drop, that sort of other part of the tax picture also starts to weaken for states. Corporate income taxes account for about 6 or 7% of state tax revenue. So all told, these are the major sources of revenues that have been declining for states. For FY 2009, you can see across the country that there is a situation where some states are in much more severe much more severe problems regarding their FY 2009 budget gaps, with about 9 states actually reporting budget gaps in excess of 10%. These states, not surprisingly, include states like California, Nevada, Arizona. These are states that they're having the worst time at this point, southeastern states. And about 16 states reported budget gaps in the range of 5 to 9.9%. And then about 16 states reporting budget gaps in the range of about 1 to 4.9%. When it's between 1% and 4.9%, it's manageable for the most part. States make some directed cuts, tap into reserves, they can manage it. But when they start getting above 10%, generally states tend to have some severe problems in trying to balance their budgets at that point. For FY 2010, the situation has worsened for many states. What stands out here is that almost half the states, 24 states, have reported to us that their budget gap forecasts are in excess of 10%. 7 states report budget gaps in the range of 5 to 9.9%, and only 3 states report budget gaps, projections at this point in the range of 1 to 4.9%. So a small number of states, it's actually the largest percentage, or the grouping is towards the larger, or the double-digit shortfall projection for the next fiscal year. And it's a situation that is, it's actually worsening because there are 16 states that have not reported, and it's not because they don't project a budget gap. It's, in many cases, the governors actually have not released their budget to their state legislature at this time. They don't know the exact numbers, what they're looking at, and so that number will probably rise as in the next couple of weeks here as states finally get their final budgets plans in place. One of the questions we've also been asked is, what are states doing to balance their budgets? What are, and I'll run through these, and these are situations that or approaches that are quickly changing or evolving as states move further along into the legislative sessions. But recently, when we asked what were your states doing to balance your FY 2009 budget gaps, they replied, for example, that they were looking at across-the-board budget cuts. 20 states were reported that they had already instituted some form of across-the-board budget cutting. Another 10 states were considering, and these range from Delaware doing an across-the-board cut of about 7%, Georgia 10%, Kansas 3%, Maine 5%, Nevada, which has had some of the worst problems, is 7.4% and above, depending on which agencies that we're talking about. Other actions the states reported were targeted program cuts. In other words, they were looking at a specific program and like higher education. Higher education tends to be the one program that's targeted more than any other program because it represents the largest program that is discretionary spending in nature for states. It doesn't have formulas for the most part that drive spending. So higher education, not surprisingly, was being targeted in at least 18 states. K-12 education was targeted in at least 14 states on our most recent survey. When K-12 education starts showing up as a targeted program, you know things are getting bad because K-12 education tends to be a favorite program in just about every state for the legislators. Medicaid, 14 states targeting it. Corrections in 14 states. Local government aid, at least 10 states. Other actions that we are seeing across the country are personnel related, in other words, payroll related, that involve state employees, including salary freezes, hiring freezes, travel bans, layoffs, furloughs. These are the kind of things that the states are seeing or reporting more and more of as we get further into this recession. Other actions to balance FY 2009 budgets at this time include tapping rainy day funds, as I mentioned before, fund sweeps, at least 21 states, in other words, going beyond your general fund and looking at anywhere your state may have some cash reserves and sweeping those into your general fund to try to offset some cuts. Delaying capital projects, which under the stimulus bill may be toned down a little bit if there's enough money in there to put back into some of these capital projects, if they're, quote, shovel ready, for example. Shifting pay-as-you-go to debt issuance in at least 3 states. Purchase freezes, tax amnesty programs. Sort of we keep hearing over and over again that it's, everything's on the table. Some potential tax and fee increases in 2009 include tobacco taxes that are being considered in states like Kentucky, Utah, Virginia. Alcohol taxes, increases in California, Massachusetts, and New York. Even soda and candy taxes in Massachusetts and New York are being considered, and some gambling taxes in Alabama. So we're seeing, again, and here's some more in regards to sales taxes that are being considered in a variety of states. Hospital taxes or provider taxes, personal income taxes, surcharge in California is being considered. Some tax accelerations in New Mexico and Nevada, and the elimination of the sales tax and closing in New York. So states are considering a variety of options, including budget cuts and tax increases. So here are some other ones. Oil and natural gas tax increases in California and Montana. Gasoline tax increases being considered in California, Idaho, and Illinois and Oregon. Vehicle registration and violation changes. These are fees for the most part, not taxes, in Colorado, Florida, and Idaho, and even rental car taxes in Idaho as well. So I kind of went through, there was a lot of information here, but I was trying to give you, the audience, sort of a flavor of what is happening across the country at this current time. It is perhaps one of the most difficult periods for states in quite a while. And I will, at this point, turn it over to questions. Thank you again.